If you're writing for everybody, nobody's going to read it, kind of thing. But if you're, like you said,
yeah,
you're writing
it's the same thing, right? Yeah. You
like going narrower is actually going wider. But if you're writing a book about yourself, no one's going to give a crap, right? But if you're writing a book for other people about yourself,
yeah,
like a good memoir is retelling stories, but adding like value to people.
Read it off. What's the quote?
Okay, so this is George Bernard Shaw. He says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing."
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, I find that some people, when they retire, they stop doing things, and then they just fade so quickly because they've been doing things their entire life. They have the routine, they're going, their brains are getting used, and then they retire and they do nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Like it's essentially
it's kind of like the muscles that we were meant, like the brain muscles and stuff that we were meant to use our whole lives to flourish and to thrive. We're just like, I'm just gonna clock out at like 65 and I'm gonna pay myself to be lazy and to like just die.
Yeah.
And I'm not like in a casket yet, but I'm literally like dead in every sense of the word, other than
I know for me, like with retirement for me, I don't feel like I'm gonna retire. I feel like I'm going to continue to do the things I love, which is what I'm doing now, and then just carry that forward. And I think culture just went towards that retirement for so long.
Yeah.
I don't think the younger generations are going to look at retirement the same way. They're going to look at life as an entire process, and towards the end, you still got to find things to do. You still got to stay busy, and a lot of that's not going to include stopping working to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it comes down to the mindset, and I talk about this in my book, The Childlike Heist, a lot, but it really comes down, and I wanted to battle with the mindset of being a grown-up, you know? Like, it's just kind of like, because the grown-up mindset of, like, the Western world is, like, you know, go to school, you know, get educated by, like, you know, be a number in a system, and then go to college not knowing what you want to do with your life, to get a degree, to pay for, to be in loans or student loans, and to pay debt off for, like, 20 years, and then get a job that you hate because you couldn't get a job you loved, and then work for another 40 years, and then die because you retired, but you don't have enough money to retire. And it's kind of this, like, it's a mindset that most people live by, but I'm like, I'm not gonna live by that, and there's gotta be a better way. So I just, part of the reason I wrote this book is, like, I wanted to explore that better way that I think is possible for us to stay childlike in our mindset forever, so.
I like that. I mean, really, and any podcaster, anyone that's growing up now realizes that the system that we've grown up in was a little bit broken, right? We have to have fun. We have a limited amount of time. We have to go out there and discover and enjoy what we do every single day. And I haven't read your book yet, but we got it here, so we'll just show everybody. And I'm gonna have to go through it and take a look at that, because I like the theory. Well, I guess let's fire this up. So before I go, cue sound the sound.
Yeah. Are we fired up?
We're fired up. We're rolling.
So we're just
freestyling early and just a little warm up. And all right, cue sound the sound, and we're with Justin Wiesinger.
You got sound plugged into the cam?
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, nice.
We're rolling, buddy.
Okay, cool.
Justin. Okay, so author, and then videographer too.
Videographer, filmmaker, speaker,
and
just life enthusiast overall.
So tell me a little bit then about the process. I want to touch on the book because I'm writing a book now about marketing, and I've been going through the process, which has been long. Yeah. I believe in speed to market, so I've been minimizing revisions and trying to get it out as quickly as possible. But I've been stuck a couple times. We were developing the theory. We were going out. We were learning a little bit. And now we're in the process of working to get it published, either self-published or finding a publisher. So
for sure.
Just take me through the entire journey so that someone that's trying to write a book out there knows how you did it, and maybe a couple of tips you learned along the way.
Yeah, for sure. So it all started actually back when my parents, when I was 6 years old, my parents bought one of those ancient, like, this is the early 90s, right, Jared? So, like, it was an ancient Apple Macintosh, like the Macintosh, like the
So like the box.
The box one, so like the gray box, not even like the like
not a colorful one,
not the colorful one, but like before that, right? So like it like shocked your retinas when you turned it on, and you're like, when you open.
And they only had a couple things, right? They had Word that.
Yeah, there was like Claris Works, and that was the main one, like the painting one. I would design skateboard shoes and stuff and whatever, and then the word processor, I forget what it was called, but there's Netscape Navigator for like I'm really dating myself.
The only thing I remember is I was in school, I was in elementary, and we had the typing game where we would like learn how to type.
Yes.
So that was on that
yeah, it was built in.
Yeah. No, that was so.
Yeah. So I guess I was really into fantasy books growing up. Like I remember watching the BBC series of Narnia. There was like BBC broadcasters did like a live action version of that series of books. Like I think 4 out of 7 of the books. And I loved that. And I'm like, I've got to read this C.S. Lewis guy. So I read his fantasy books, and it just like took me to another world. And I'm like, I have to do this. And like I started looking into like The Hobbit and stuff at a young age, and other books like Encyclopedia Brown was like a series I loved as a kid, because this like young kid detective got to solve mysteries and do all these crazy things that like his parents didn't even know he was doing. And
yeah, you fell in love with the stories.
Yeah, I just fell in love with stories. So I was like, man, I want to live a better story, and I want to be able to tell really good stories through writing. So that was kind of what got me into that. So I remember spending hours during the day. I was homeschooled too. Yeah. So up until grade 7. So I probably spent 4 hours a day reading, like just devouring books and lots of books and stuff at the local library. And then I also, I probably wrote like, I had this fantasy book called Elgon's Adventure, and I was working on it for like a few months. Yeah. After a while, I got disinterested and moved on to other things, but I probably wrote like 200 pages of this book on the word processor on the Mac. So that just kind of lit me up that I could just like let whatever's going on in my imagination spill out onto a page and onto a screen. So I don't know if my parents kept the manuscript. They kept lots of my early crafts and stuff to show me when I'm older and married.
Yeah, parents always do.
Yeah, so I don't know if they kept it, but I remember just writing countless pages of that book and wanting to kind of, you know, loosely based on like The Hobbit and like Lord of the Rings and Narnia, and trying to like build my own little world. So I just found writing for me was a place where I could dive into just escape from like the pains of, you know, growing up, like parents fighting and people arguing in the house.
Just the life stuff, whatever it is, and everyone has it different, right? Everyone has that life things that most people in the public don't see, right? All the things behind the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
And you found your escape.
Yeah, exactly. So I found that I had the privilege of being homeschooled and doing a lot of that exploring and adventuring that most kids don't get to do as much as somebody who's like not like on a short leash, you know. Like my mom was sick a lot of my growing up years, so she was in bed till like noon, so I would just be like skateboarding and building ramps and like reading and writing and, you know, making like live action plays out of like cardboard, making sets and pretending I'm like in some musical and doing crazy stuff. And then I'd have to wait till my friends got home from school to hang out with them. But I kept myself so busy because I was so active, and my mind was so active, my imagination was so active. So I'll get back into this, how this correlates to the book.
No, but I mean, that's the start, right?
But the start of it is like, you know, I think a lot of people look at their childhoods and they don't like, due to the pain and the trauma and the struggles of like growing up younger, when they're younger, I think a lot of people miss the magic of like what it's like to have a mind of a child, you know, and to explore and to adventure and to taste those tastes and smell those experiences, and just to like thrive and to have the memories of those good times, even though it maybe have been crowded with bad times too. But like to be able to go back and like in retrospect, you know, 10, 20 years on your 6-year-old self and be like, who was Justin or who was Jared when he was 6 years old? Like, what was he about? Because I think chances are you would still want to be about that now.
Well, like you said, well, everyone wishes they were younger, right? Like that's one of the things people say. And I think if you go back and you think about it, like you said earlier, the culture that surrounds us right now in North America is you grow up as fast as possible. Yeah. And you're just taking it right back to if you were 13 again, what would you think about? What would you do, and how would you go about it? So
yeah, exactly.
I like that. It's okay. So
yeah,
then that
writing.
happened.
So my first experience of writing was when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So I obsessed over language arts, like reading and writing and stuff, and I always did good at that in school. So I went to a public school in grade 7, and I didn't find it being a hard transition to get into public school, like being able to keep up with the classes and the homework. Like for math and stuff was kind of hard, and I didn't really like science that much because I'm like, is the Earth's core really 10,000 degrees? I'm like, I don't know. But you know, I disagree with some of it and stuff, and like But yeah, I found that like I was always into writing, and that was kind of a constant through my life. Like whether it was journaling and writing and making skits with friends and stuff, and writing little video vignettes for junior high, and like doing creative projects as well. So I found that when I got older, when I was 27 at the time was when I started this book. I started to write down some stories working at a summer camp for a few years. And when my campers were still asleep, I'd get up early in the morning, and I'm like, I just want to reflect on my childhood, because like these kids are having a good time, and I want to remember, kind of like intentionally take some time to meditate on my like growing up years and just kind of write down what I can remember. Because I heard this, one of my favorite authors named Bob Goff is like a best-selling author, and he wrote down everything he could remember from his life, like every experience he could ever remember, and he's like pages and pages of stuff. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, I just want to remember, even if I remember 10 cool stories from my childhood, I want to be able to write about that and just have, whether it's for myself or maybe for a few friends to look at, I want to do that. So a few years ago when I was at the camp, I wrote down a few stories, and then more recently, 2 years ago, I was at a retreat with some friends in Banff, and I was getting up early, and I pulled out my laptop because I remember I had those stories written down, and I'm like, maybe I've got a few more than just 2 stories, because I had a story about my dad moving out when I was younger, and him kind of taking off for a bit, and a story about buying my first Batman action figure with my mom when I was 6. So I was like, these are kind of cool stories, and they're kind of fun. So yeah, 2 years ago I had kind of a lull in my work. I was freelancing video full time. So I had like 2 weeks where, I hope, I didn't want it to be 2 weeks, but I had 2 weeks when I was just kind of, idle, but I didn't want to like just waste that time. I wanted to work with it. So I kind of had just like a zest of inspiration, like almost like a, like, I think we can all have like
a eureka moment.
A eureka moment where like the title of the book hit me before I even started writing anything, and I'm like, the Childlike Heist, and it was like the whole book just like downloaded.
I love it when the light bulb goes off in your head for anything, for entrepreneurs, for business, for you writing your book. When the light bulb goes off and you can take that idea to fruition, it's a feeling. It's
like it was just a feeling.
In the zone.
It was the right time. I was in the zone. It was the right place. I was drinking Kangen water. I was like jacked. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna do this. So I just spent 4 hours every morning for 2 weeks straight, 5 days a week, 2 weekends and stuff. I spent like 10 days just working on these chapters. So by the end of the 2 weeks, I had, I think I had about 13 or 14 rough drafts. So junk drafts of a chapter of the book. And I'm like, is this following a format? Because I wanted to have like a really funny story and then a really cool lesson, based on like the story, and kind of have metaphors and analogies and stuff. So my friend Laura was watching, she was getting, every afternoon she'd get an email of 3 sample chapters, and she's laughing and sending me notes and stuff, and she's just like,
so that was your first focus group?
So my first focus group was my friend Laura, and she was like, I cannot stop laughing, keep it coming, this is so great. So I had that person that I was relying on me to send her more content. So every day I'd send her what I'd written, whether it was 2 or 3 little chapters, 2,000 word chapters or whatever. So that was really cool. And then I had a bigger focus group maybe a month or 2 later. I sent the whole batch of rough draft chapters to a few friends on Dropbox.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey guys, check this out. What do you guys think? And because I knew I was writing, at that point I knew I was writing a book. I'm like, this is going to be sweet. It's going to be great. And it's going to help a lot of people and stuff. And I don't think I had...
Carl, it's okay, man. Don't worry.
And I had a pretty good idea of where the book was going, because the stories were good and stuff, but unpacking the quality of the analogies and the life lessons and stuff didn't really come about till the editing phase, which is kind of funny. And I find that's I heard another author named Jeff Goins talk about how his best writing was he had 70,000 words, and then he chopped it down to 50,000 with the editor, and then he added 5,000 because he wanted to add that polish and that zest.
It's interesting you say that, because we had Alison Clark, which is another author in the city, out, and she said her advice was, don't worry about a masterpiece, write it. Put it all on paper.
Yeah.
And then work it like clay and polish it.
Yeah,
that was her exact words.
Crazy.
And she said that because I think too many people, and myself included, I tried to make the first draft pretty close to what I wanted the first draft to be.
Okay.
In comparison to just getting it out there and then polishing it. And in the end, even though I tried to make the first draft perfect, I ended up going back,
Yeah.
rewriting some of it, and then polishing it, and then going through that. So I almost added a step because I didn't just try to get it all out all at once.
Because I think the best thing, like, I mean, mine's a memoir. It's kind of like a self-help memoir kind of combo, which is, I don't know if it's been done much, but memoir is kind of a newer style that's like really taking off, right? And there's this author who wrote a book called The Memoir Project. I forget her name, but you can look it up in the notes and later on.
Yeah.
So The Memoir Project, and she said, so the first draft is you're telling yourself the story, right? Like you're basically like you're retelling what you remember. So that, for me, I was just kind of like, hey Justin, do you remember when this happened? So I'm like writing it all down. And that's kind of what it is. Like, so even for a marketing book, like for yourself, like you're telling yourself, you're selling yourself the story. You're like, this is what I'm doing. And these are the elements that come into play for good video marketing.
And the other thing that helped, and we didn't do a great job, and it'll reflect in the book, but the other thing that helped was trying to write it for one person rather than everybody.
Yeah.
So really narrowing it down, and something for me with the marketing book, rather than trying to make it overarching, which my book is going to be somewhat overarching. It's not necessarily written for one specific person.
Niche or something.
Yeah, it's still a niche, but it's not necessarily like I wrote it for one person. It's a little bit more broad. But next time as I go about the process, because it started to help us out, remembering that I'm writing it for this one person. That's different for me than you, because you're writing a memoir. You're writing it about yourself.
Yeah, but the key though behind it is that, like, if you're writing a book for, what was it? I saw it today actually. It was talking about like even memoirs or just for writing. If you're writing for everybody, nobody's gonna read it, kind of thing. But if you're, like you said, you're writing
it's the same thing, right? Yeah. You
like going narrower is actually going wider. And if you're writing a book about yourself, no one's gonna give a crap, right? But if you're writing a book for other people about yourself, like a good memoir is retelling stories, but adding like value to people, right? It's not like, this is my story and like my life is so interesting and stuff, because like maybe it is, but the key to it though is like I had to be like, it's not about me. Like a good memoir, a good book is not about the author. It's not about their story. It's about like the message behind it, right? It's about being childlike. It's about that kind of stuff. The stories and the memoirs and the anecdotes is just kind of the icing on the cake. It's a delivery method. It's a tool in our tool belt to deliver like a home run for the audience. So it's like, because then when you write it, I think you write it in the right way. They're like, one thing I really wanted to avoid in my book was telling people how to feel. Right? Like, you should feel angry that this happened to me, or you should feel upset. I never allowed myself to go there, because I'm like, if people are going to enjoy this, I want them to like, they may have different emotions. Like one person might be like, ooh, I'm kind of like pissed off at this guy, like cut down Justin's tree for it, you know? Or like, I'm kind of like upset that like, I can't believe he didn't forgive him for 10 years about that. Or like, you know, or like whatever. So it's kind of like, I can't believe Justin's dad left for 2 years or whatever. It's kind of like people are they're going to respond,
different
and they're
emotions.
going to find, and they're going to pull out elements. Like, and I think part of it too is like, write down what you mean to say. Don't try to write and cover your bases in every angle, because like people are going to draw meaning, and they're going to find an access point that they may like read it a different way based on their perspective, right? So it's kind of like, I had a friend talk to me like, that had a totally different viewpoint on one chapter than I did. And I'm like, man, I wish I added that in. But he's like, no, he's like, I'm glad you didn't, because I came to that conclusion myself. Because like reading what you wrote was like, maybe I can spin it this way a bit, or maybe my perspective is kind of a little bit different, but it's like everybody kind of gets to look what you're looking at, like through a looking glass of their own kind of flavor. And they're like, like.
But that's the magic of any story, and that's the magic. Well, I'll get into this a little more, because one thing that story writing always does is it relates a lot to the way that companies brand themselves and the way that companies market. But before we even get to that, then take it. So you finished the book how long ago? 2 years ago?
So I started it 2 years ago, and I launched it in April of this year. Okay,
so what was that? So like, you started it 2 years ago, you wrote it, then is it self-published or do you get a publisher?
It's kind of a mix of both.
Okay.
I have a friend that's kind of a startup publishing company.
Okay, so awesome. So that, again, I talked to Allison, because when so many authors tell me that the querying is the hardest part, and then Allison comes in and tells me that for her it was networking. And then for you, and to a certain extent with a friend starting with a startup, it's a bit of networking too, right?
Yeah.
So it's I think there's so many authors out there that are trying to query and writing their book and pushing, but there's more than one way now in today's world to get it published. You can self-publish, you can query and go the old-fashioned way and find a publisher, you can go out and network to find a publisher, you can There's Amazon print as you go. Like there's so many different ways to make it happen.
All that
yeah,
stuff,
you can make
Yeah.
if you have it written and you want to get those words out there. There's ways to find to do it now.
Exactly, yeah. And it really depends on what your goals are, right? Like my goal wasn't like, now my goal is to be a best-selling author, you know, to be able to speak, and I want to build a speaking business out of my book. Like, I kind of view a book, and you might view it the same way too, as like being a business card of the 21st century, right? Like we're, you know, entrepreneurs and stuff, and I have a video production business, and I do speaking and stuff. But I think a book is a good way to be like, this is who I am, and like, because like everybody has a business card, but like to have a book and to give somebody like $5 print of a book, to be like, this is me. You know,
and the craziest
kind of speaks more than
the craziest thing about a book for me is, like you just said, you started it 2 years ago and you launched it in April. I'm deep into the process. It is hard. So anyone's like, I'm gonna write a book. I'm like, no, man. Like this is
it's crazy.
It consumes you.
Yeah.
So it's not like a business card where you can go on Vistaprint and send it and it's in the mail and it's there and like
for sure.
Writing that
and you can't like,
and I can respect that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the crazy.
And doing it right, like, and I had a really unique situation because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. All I knew was like, I'm writing a book, and I committed, like I made like I think it's so important. I just rambled out and cut myself off.
Q, how are we doing for time?
We're doing good.
We're doing
so
good?
It's so important, Jared. Like, I think we just have to make decisions and stick with them, you know, as entrepreneurs, as business people, as marketers. Like we have to, everyone's a marketer, but a lot of people are like, I'm gonna do this, and then they lie to themselves, and we let ourselves down, and we make promises that we can't keep, and then it's kind of like a self-defeating mentality, right? And a lot of people are just kind of feeling low and depressed because they'll be like, I'm gonna write a book, and then they're like doing the exact opposite a week later, right? So when I decided to do that, I was like, I'm gonna write a book, but I'm like, no, I see the end in mind, and I'm running with this. I don't care if I'm not gonna have a girlfriend for the next 2 years, which I didn't. I'm like, I don't care if it's gonna like cause me to be like staying up at night, like scratching my brains out because my editor is just like tooling me, you know, over email and Google Docs, and I'm like, if it's gonna be hard, I know it's gonna be hard, but I know it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah, there's so many reasons why I think people now don't execute on their goals and don't go and do it. And I'm still young. I'm still learning those things. I'm definitely not a life coach. I'm definitely not at that stage. Don't have enough experience. But one thing for me is you just have to, you got to make a decision and stick with it. The same thing you said. When I wanted to write the book, I decided it, and I had to make time to do that. I had to take what I did and all the buckets that I was trying to fill. We call it the buckets of entrepreneurship now. It comes up in every second episode, but I was doing as much as I could in the business, and I had to make time in the mornings to get up and get going on the book and work with the editor and make that happen, work with my writer and try our best to get that done and find time for it. You just have to make it happen.
Yeah, and you've got to just reorganize and reprioritize what you value, right? So, what's I talking about? Back to writing. So I hired an editor through my friend that helped me publish.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about editors, like what they charge, what you should be charged and stuff. So I think I dropped like over $1,000 on this editor just to help me with kind of the content and stuff. And so she walked me through everything, and I was like, I actually paid for a light edit, which don't ever pay for a light edit, okay? Like even if it's like a good deal, like don't do it. Go for like the heaviest, most grueling edit of your life because it's gonna pay you.
You want the red lines.
You want the red lines.
You want it to come back. What do I say? Bleeding neon almost.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So this lady like didn't do a lot of depth. She was like finding spelling errors and stuff, but that's not like a good editor is gonna kick you in the a-hole, and it's gonna be crazy, and you're gonna be like upset. You're gonna question like your sanity. You're gonna be like, do I have what it takes to do this? Am I even a writer? Am I meant to be a writer and stuff? But in the end, it's gonna be worth it. So
see, I was good with numbers. I'm not inherently. I can write. I'm not inherently a good writer. So for me, it was a combination of my writer and editor and everything put together to get this done. It wasn't as simple as just sitting down and putting it all together. So it's a challenge, right? And it does kick you in the teeth a couple times as you're going through, when you start to realize that even some of the things I said in the beginning, towards the end, we were reading it and we're like, yeah, you know what? Nah, Jared, what you're thinking there is probably not so great. Yeah. So it just kicks you in the teeth, and you have to realize that that's part of the process.
Exactly. So what I didn't realize with this first editor, bless her heart, she's a great lady. that she wasn't going into enough depth, right? Like what I needed. Like she was kind of like maybe a bit of a people pleaser, or you know, she wasn't just like trying to get on my case and get me upset or offended, right? And I wanted to get offended, I wanted to get upset about it, but she wasn't like saying things, like she wasn't disagreeing with me, you know. And a good editor will disagree with like half of the things you say in your book, I think. So, or be like, why do you say this? Like, do you actually believe that? You know? So, yeah. So I spent like 4 months working with this first editor, and then I had like a finished product, and then I sent it to Dalen, the publisher, and I'm like, dude, isn't it great? Like, it's so good, because I don't know what's good. No, it's not. And he was like, dude, it's not. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if it's anything great. Like, it's okay. It's something. It's not a book. He's like, it's something, but it's not a book.
Yeah, I remember draft 2. I remember draft 2, we finished it and we looked at it and it was a stack of paper. Yeah. And we were so pumped. We're like, oh man, we nailed it.
Yeah.
And then we came back and we looked at it and we're like, we sent it to 1 or 2 people and they came back and they're like, yeah, you got something there and it's a lot. You might want to just take it down a bit.
Yeah.
And then we basically rewrote the book after that. Okay. After Rev 2 and we came together. We originally wrote it more like an encyclopedia than like a book where I was talking to somebody. So we went back and the same thing you said, right? It kicks you in the teeth, and then you have to find a way. So anyway, what did he do? Did you guys rewrite it? Did you break it apart?
So I think it was maybe a bit before that. Well, he told me, he was like, I'm not sure about it, but he's trying to be nice. And then my mom is a homeschool facilitator, so she was visiting a family that the mom was an author of a historical fantasy novel. Her name's Christine, and she's got a great series called Dragon's Fire on Amazon, and she's a self-published author of like 5 books, I think now. But I gave her, so I went to meet with her. Right? My mom's like, you should just meet this lady and just talk to her, because she's an editor too. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, I'll talk to her. And I was all like pompous and excited. I'm like, yeah, like I've got this edit done. I'm gonna release my book soon. And I think I even like posted on Facebook. I'm like, book's coming soon, like October 2018, it's gonna be great. And I'm like, idiot, looking back. But so this is probably May of 2018, or maybe earlier. So Christine looked at my first chapter. She's like, yeah, just send me the introduction chapter, and I'll let you know what I think. And like, I was so excited but kind of nervous and like, I don't know. And she sent me back the Google Docs shared file like a week later, and it looked like a freaking Christmas tree.
Oh yeah.
It was so bad. Like I could have strung lights on it, and there was like all these like, like there was more red strikeouts than like than like my black words that were there. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So, but I had to like think in retrospect. I'm like, okay, Justin, like you decided, like you made a decision to yourself, and you made a promise, like you're gonna finish this book. And I'm like, but like, what if there's not even enough there? And I had all these like limiting beliefs and thoughts. But I'm like, no. I'm like, if you believe there's a book there, there's a book there. Because like, you know, your subconscious mind, it has to just take orders from your conscious mind, right? Like if you think you're like the crappiest writer in the world, your subconscious is going to make sure you believe you're the crap, and you are the crappiest writer in the world. So I'm like, no, I'm not a crappy writer. I just need I need some help. So I was just like, yeah, Christine, like if you're going to help me, I'd love to work with you. Because like we went back and forth for a week, you know, doing like, she did 7 or 8 drafts of each chapter. So like, some people say like, you know, I've got my 4th draft is my final copy. I have like draft 10. Oh, you know, man. Like just crazy.
Oh yeah. So going through it, I totally get it.
And I would still probably do more. Like, you know, one of my friends was like, you could have got like a copy editor afterwards to do just to find tweaking things. But I'm like, I was like exhausted from editing. I'm like, I think it's good to go. So, but yeah, that was like 6 months of her. Like she was pretty busy, so she spent like a few months. So every 2 weeks we'd pump out a chapter. So I had 16 chapters, and I wrote a few more during that period because I found like you'll have extra inspiration too. So like don't feel that like, if you're writing a book, like you may not get the entire thing out, even in your outline. Like you might have an extra chapter, but you're like, oh my gosh, I did not think of this. You know, like this is gonna help people. It's gonna change lives. So like I had a chapter I didn't include about creativity, and I'm like, why did I not write about this? Like this is like gold. And it ended up being like the favorite chapter from some of my friends. So like yeah, fairly late into the editing game. So probably it was August of 2018 when we were wrapping up. I found that I had 1 or 2 little chapters that I'm like, I've got to write about this. This is so important. So I added like 2 extra chapters pretty late in the game, but it still fell in line with the content of the book because there's 2 ways to write a book. So you can write a you can write an arch narrative, so like where you don't find out the point of the book until near the end, right? Like maybe the final chapter, like, you know, Narnia
Gotcha.
or something. Like you don't know what the point of the quest is until like, Frodo destroys the Ring of Power or whatever, right? In some cases, like a series might go on and drag you into several books, but I wrote like a modular book, which is, the point of the book is restated every chapter. So it's kind of like, it's heavy loaded in the front. So like the introduction is like bam, 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 like nailing home what you're writing about, what you're voicing to, and then every chapter reinforces that first point with a story, and then the wrap, like the conclusion, is like a big, like maybe even a higher form of like conclusion to like what the point of the book was. So that's the kind of this. I didn't know going into it what I was writing. I'm like, I hope it's like a format that makes sense. So in early 2019, I went to a best-selling boot camp in Nashville by the author Jeff Goins. He's a New York Times best-selling author of a few books. And I was really nervous because I was the only person there with a finished book. And I was like, I don't know if it's finished or not. But so yeah, I think people get scared. They're like, well, I don't want to copy somebody. And I didn't copy him, but like I love the way he told like engaging stories from his life. And then he had little points, and he had lots of like one-liner quotes in there. And I'm a quotes guy. I love quotes. I'll share more quotes with you after. But I just found that his style of writing really resonated with me. And I think our personalities are kind of the same. Like on the Enneagram, if you've heard of that, it's a personality type casting. And there's 9 types, and I'm an enthusiast, number 7. So like me and Bob are both enthusiasts on the Enneagram.
Gotcha.
So like his style of writing, his storytelling method, like really inspired me and really hit home with me. So I'm like, I could write a book like that. I'm like, I've got stories and stuff. So that was kind of my inspiration. When I read his book, I'm like, dude, I have to write a book someday. Like it's gonna be wild like his. So he's kind of, so thanks, Bob.
And you did it.
I did it. So, but that's the thing too, is like borrow from the greats, like if you've got a great idea for a book and you think it's gonna be awesome, like borrow from John Acuff, borrow from like Napoleon Hill, like borrow from their stuff. And like don't copy them. Like you can quote them directly, you may have to get permission and stuff, but borrow from the greats and like use a similar style, use a similar story structure, use a similar verbiage, or like use the kind of verbal tools that they use often, and like try to do it in your own flavor, right? Because like there's nothing new under the sun, Like,
yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
You can try to be an original, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So
well, okay, so let's take it now. Let's get to the meat and potatoes for people that have written books. Mm-hmm. So the business side now. How are you finding the business side since the book has been released? Just trying to get it out there, trying to sell. How are you handling that? And what advice do you have for me and for anyone else trying to get their book out there? Yeah,
for sure. So I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. Like I was never looking for a formal publisher when I did my book. I was pretty dead set on self-publishing. So I have a friend named Dalen who runs a small publishing company that deals with books with a similar kind of style, like a kind of a spiritual element to it, but like not like a religious book, just kind of like an inspirational book. So he was pretty good in the marketing and media side of things, and like the web design and like email marketing kind of side of it. So he helped me with that a little bit. So I was really dead set on like I wanted to like crush Instagram. Like I wanted to do a really good job of marketing Instagram, and I wanted to use that community, like not use it as like a tool to like get rich or whatever, but I wanted to engage my audience in a way that made sense to them, because like books can be very visual and they can be very engaging. Like I have my friend Tyler actually did an illustration for each chapter, so you can see like in here there's a really cool like hand-drawn illustration for every chapter. So that's called, this chapter's called Buying Batman. Yeah. So I was like, I kind of gave him a list, and I was like, yeah, I want like stuff that emulates the theme of the chapter. So he wrote like some engaging childlike little images. So I wanted to engage there's an audience for everything on Instagram, right? You just have to kind of niche down. So like my niches were hashtags like childlike and like wonder and childlike faith and stuff like that. So I was like, well, there's 70,000 people that agree with this hashtag that have used it. So I'm like, chances are, 50,000 of these people are, maybe even a quarter of them are going to want to check out my book. So I just started following that hashtag, and I'm like, I'm just going to engage. I'm going to engage with every couple posts that I see that get a couple hundred likes. I'm just going to like follow it, and like Instagram is good. If you follow a hashtag, they'll put up the most common posts, right? So I'll spend about half an hour or an hour a day, not just mindlessly scrolling Instagram, but building my audience and building a community
by engaging.
By engaging, right? Because even Gary Vee says, if you're not engaging people, you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah,
you're
the dollar. You're using his $1.80 rule.
Yeah. And I may not engage 100 people a day, but I'll try to do a few dozen, right? And I'll try to make a list. In my notes app, I'll write down their hashtag or their @ sign, and I'll be what their username is, and I'll be I should probably stay in touch with this person because it might be a sale, right? So during the week of launch, I had a really fun strategy, I guess. I wanted to do a launch party and make it big, and I wanted it to be epic, and I was I don't know if I'm gonna do it, but so I rented the pirate ship at West Edmonton Mall, and it can only really fit 50 people. That's the capacity for it. And previously, I shot a music video for my friend and fellow artist Paul Woida, who's a singer-songwriter, and he's pretty popular in town. And he's opening for Boys to Men this summer, so just check it out downtown. But he did a video, and we piled a bunch of people onto the ship and had a fun time. And I'm what's more childlike than a pirate ship, right? In a mall. So, and I use it kind of as
every time I walk through West Ed, I look at that pirate ship, and you kind of look at it in awe because it's a cool feature.
Yeah. And I read about it in my book. Bob Goff inspired me because his office is on Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland, which is so badass. And he used to be a lawyer, so he'd have meetings with he's also a diplomat for the Republic of Uganda. So he'll bring world leaders into Disneyland, put on Mickey Mouse ears and paddle them across to Tom Sawyer Island and have meetings about child slavery and human trafficking and stuff, and witch doctors and crazy stuff. And I'm that is super awesome. So I was I need to buy Tom. Where can Justin have a Tom Sawyer Island? So I'm well, the next best thing I could think of is I could have a cannon under my desk. I could take out a city block. So I chose to pay $2 once in a while, and I'll use it as my office on the pirate ship. So and I wrote lots of my book on the ship too. So I did editing there. I did some of the writing there, and I'll have lots of meetings there too. I'll just bring an eye patch and bubble gum, and I'll tell my friends, you got to bring a foam sword or else we can't meet. So,
just take it right back to the childhood.
And honestly, it's people will kind of it's funny. I'll be there for a couple hours editing a video or something, and there's even free. What kind of pirate ship doesn't have free Wi-Fi, right? It does, which is awesome. So I'm I could spend $1,000 for an office, or I'm kind of ADD. I have to change my environment.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because when I started my business, I used to go to the Starbucks right beside the pirate ship, and when I didn't have an office, that's where I'd go. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people said to me, "Why would you go to West Ed to work?" And I just enjoyed the atmosphere. I'm not saying that I was thinking at the time childlike or anything like that. I just enjoyed the atmosphere of being in West Edmonton Mall with all the people. A lot of people were still working in that Starbucks, right? Connected to chapters, so you got inspiration and creativity, and the pirate ship's outside. So I get it. I can kind of feel where you're going, and I mean, you're taking it to another level.
Yeah. So I was I wrote a blog earlier this year. I actually only started blogging this year because I was man, I'm writing a book. I should have a blog. So I started in January, going pretty consistently every few weeks or every week or so. But I wrote one about how your workspace is so important to your psyche and your mental health, and just your overall mindset of creativity, right? So I just found I don't go to the pirate ship often, but if ever I'm having a down day, I beeline it there. I'm no, I need to go on the ship, because the fun part about it is, Jared, is you'll be on the ship for 20 minutes and you'll see people poking around, and they're stopping with their bags. They're how is he on there? They're how did he get on? He's got a laptop out. And then they're and I'm come on guys, get on board. It's $2. Just go to the info desk, and then they'll pay. And one time I left, and it's happened a few times, there was 13 people on the ship. There's 30 there's an Asian family. I started a trend, and people were just you're welcome aboard. And that's the whole thing, is the childlike mindset of whimsy and wonder and fascination is there's more room. There's no room. There's so much competition being a grown up and an adult, and adulting too hard. But there's no competition. The kids, even Jesus was let the children come to me, and there's you can't even enter the kingdom of heaven unless you become a child. And I'm man, that's profound.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, and I love how you started the trend too. It just takes one person. In marketing, we call it validation, right? As soon as there's a group theory and a group mindset, then people start to congregate.
So that's the thing, is exactly.
So as soon as you started the trend and people started coming on, then you create this validation of being on the boat, and then everyone's figuring out how to get on the boat. So
so this book really is I'm not trying to just be an author and like, I know I've got things to say, but I'm honestly trying to start a movement where like the whole society like shifts this swarm mob mentality of grown-ups to like, I want to see a bunch of crazy, amazing, maverick, like young adults and even old people dropping their stupid retirement funds and just being like, no, I still have a purpose. Like I still have meaning. I still have value to give. I still have hope. I still have breath. So that means that I've got a purpose and I've got, you know, I've still got more time ahead of me than behind me. You know?
And find the passion.
And find the passion and be like, you know, what if I just dropped my limiting beliefs? What if I just dropped the opinions of others? They're stupid. Like, what does somebody's opinion even matter? Like, nobody, you know, like people don't even think much about other people. So why even give them the time of the day to make you feel bad or to not pursue a dream, right? So I really kind of like, I want to kind of sneak, the heist part of the book is really, because it's like, why is it a child? Like, what is a heist? You know, a heist is like taking a large amount of money from a bank, or like, it's a robbery. So I'm like, it's time to like take back the childlikeness of like everybody alive, to be like, oh my gosh, to open them to this world, like to open them to like the Peter Pan wonder of like,
to be excited about things,
to be excited about life, because like so many people are bored. And I have a chapter talking about how, you know, we can become a superhero like Batman, you know, and how there's like lots of superheroes around us who we can learn to become like. And I'm like, chances are, if you're feeling bored in this life, nobody's told you that you're actually a superhero. You know, so it's like we've all got
and
that.
Everyone's their own superhero.
You know, and that heroism has to be drawn out of us through challenges, through setbacks, through trials and struggles and temptations and defeat and failure, right? Like so many people hate the F word, the other F word, and like, but failure is like the childlike spirit celebrates people's failures. Like when kids fall down, their friends are like, "Get back up, bro! Like, come on, you can do this! Like, come on!" But like, you know, when
first
we fail,
time you go across the monkey bars, first time you're going down the big slide, whatever it is, right?
When we fail as adults, like that tenacity for perseverance is like stomped and kicked crap out of us, and we're like, we fail at something, like our marriage fails, and we're just like, oh, it's game over. Like and we say like I'm a failure, but like no, like failure is not a personification. Failure is a mindset, and failure is just like a part of life, and it's a pathway to a future victory or a future success. So like, you know, the childlike mindset says like there's more time to succeed, but the grown-up mindset is like failure is the end. And I hate that. And there's so many things that like kind of come into that grown-up mindset that just suck. So I'm like, there's got to be a better mindset to like adapt. So
wow, and it's all in there. So I'm excited to read that one. I'm pumped. Like,
so if there's kind of one quote that like Jeff Goins actually coined this, so I'll have to give credit to him, but they were asking me in this round circle of like 20 authors. We were like, being my book was done, I was nervous to share because like we were talking about the big idea, and every book needs to have a big idea, right? Like it's needed to like, and it can't just be like, that's interesting. It's got to be like, that is interesting. Like you don't want to be like, that's good. You want people to say, that's interesting. Like, so it could be kind of like a thing, like a phrase, like, the big idea could be, I used to think that being childlike was a season of life, but now I know that what I said to him was, but now I know it's a mindset. And he's like, you don't even sound excited about that, Justin. And I'm like, I'm not really excited about it. I was like, that was kind of like my big idea. After I wrote the book, I'm like, I'm doing this backwards. But like he clarified it for me. He's like, what if, Justin? He's like, what if the big idea is, I used to think that being childlike was a season of life, but now I know it's the point of life. And I was like,
boom.
I'm like, worth the $2,000 to fly down here. Like, that was worth it for me. So that's like, yeah, it was huge.
Justin, you crushed it. Stay childlike, stay free, like you said. And this has been a blast, buddy.
Cool. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
And yeah, if you guys want to check out the book, you can go to my Instagram. It's at Justin to Writing or thechildlikeheist.ca.
We'll get Q to put it at the bottom of the video, and then we'll get it in the tags when it gets posted. But yeah, no, I'm pumped. We'll get it up here, and I'm excited to read it. So
nice.
Thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.